I want to welcome in our next guest, Charles Moon, stock strategist, Prosper Trading Academy. Charles, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. We have a lot to talk about and catch up on. I mean, the nuclear energy story has been a big one, how to power these data centers, and they've come up with a lot of different ideas. What are you thinking here? Are we going to see more spending on this sort of road?
Yeah, 100%. I think this is where the biggest advancement in AI is really going to come into play, to be able to power, what's required so that these machines can actually learn and get into the segment of AI that's going to be actually extremely profitable. This is where we need to see, these companies make this leap in technology. And we've seen how fast technology has evolved over these years. It wouldn't surprise me that it happens sooner than later. The timeline is actually projected out towards 2028 or a little bit later in terms of advancements. But if somehow this could be accelerated, this is where the segment could be really sneaky in terms of very bullish upside plays for the AI segments. Names like OKLO, SMR, NNE will be on watch. They've fallen from the skies here because we've realized that the market's gotten a little ahead of themselves. But this is probably going to be one of the most important parts in terms of advancements and growth of AI and AI story.
All right. Well, look, I mean, we were talking earlier about memory stocks, too. Do you think this group is a go-to? Names like you're looking at Western Dig, Seagate, Micron. Some of these have been really great performers, too.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, when we look at the entirety of the AI story, this is the segment that's actually held up the best for the entire year. Micron still pushing and making new all-time highs just as far as yesterday. We've seen how demand has actually accelerated in Asia. We're not going to see any slowdown in the United States. This is probably the one segment to watch for, consistent growth with lesser volatility in 2026. And it looks like right now, Wall Street's betting that Micron, MU, is going to be the leader of this segment. We've seen STX trading at these levels is shocking when you look at what their price points were last year, and, they're knocking on the door of $300. It's almost as if they came up really sneaky all year long. They've been trending really strong and still maintaining trend, but it really does seem like they're really set up really well for 2026 to not only sustain their momentum, to also be one of the leaders, if not the leader, of the AI segments.
I mean, you have to have this in your portfolio. I mean, what percentage of a portfolio is what parts of AI or the memory part or the energy part? I mean, how much of a portfolio are you going to put to work in this group?
Well, for me, in terms of how people want to invest into this sector, it's all about risk tolerance. This is going to be the most volatile segment, right? Anything related to AI. We've seen explosive growth. We've seen really tremendous pullbacks in a lot of different names. And so, for me, I like bottom picking on great value and looking at it for the longer term. You're going to want to, focus and concentrate more on the standouts to, I guess, lessen the volatility. But, obviously, if you're looking for hard acceleration in your portfolio, you sometimes just have to take the leap into some of these names. People thought that NVIDIA was a little bit top heavy and a little overvalued in 2024, and we've seen that NVIDIA is still marching along. We need to try and find, I guess, better opportunities on these pullbacks. Trying to invest in Micron at these peak levels, it's going to be tough to digest for the investor. But that being said, performance is still performance. Trend is still trend. I'm a big believer in AI. I believe that this is not a bubble. Maybe certain segments like the quantum sector could be a little bit too early. But ultimately, this is the actual transition. This is where technology is veering. Otherwise, companies like Google and Meta and Amazon wouldn't have the capex just on this calendar year alone investing into this sector.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about what's going on with the Fed? I mean, are you counting on a rate cut? Do you need a rate cut? And obviously, the Fed chair is going to be changing too. But right now, we have one price in. Whoever comes in is going to do one. So there's your one. How important is who runs the Fed or getting rate cuts to you?
This is where it gets tricky because it's more important about what Wall Street thinks, right? It depends on what Wall Street thinks in relation to where we are with inflation. The Fed policy stance has been long stated that they're looking for a 2% inflation average interest. I'm sorry, average rate, right? And there's concerns that if the Fed stance is too aggressive in cutting rates, that this could really stabilize inflation and not allow it to come down to that 2% average. And depending on which Fed head is going to be elected, there's a chance that they could really make that push. They make that, jump towards trying to do more than two, maybe even pushing towards four. And if they're knocking on the door of four, without a shadow of a doubt, especially if it's someone that's handpicked by Trump and more in line with Trump's policies, it would make a lot of sense that that individual is going to be looking to initiate half basis point cuts instead of quarter basis point cuts on their first initial rate cuts. So, we've already seen an individual like Fed Micron looking and pushing for a 50 basis point cut. I don't know if that's going to be the case. And again, I don't know how the markets are going to react to this. I think that's going to be really telling. If the market does find this very positive, well, then certainly we know that the rate cut is equate to a bullish market reaction. Maybe that's tried and true, but if there's some concerns, it may just cause a lot of volatility and uncertainty. And generally with volatility and uncertainty, the markets never go up. They usually go down.
And I also think about, I know that there's a lot of geopolitics that are happening. They're trying to smooth a lot of this out. You had a few meetings in Florida, government shutdowns. We had one. I hope there's no more in the new year. But, are the pullbacks buying opportunities? Is every pullback a buying opportunity? Because it has been year after year after year after year. I mean, at what point do you not buy in a pullback?
Well, I guess it depends on the names themselves. If we're talking about higher quality names, like three names that I absolutely love for the upside in 2026 would be Oracle, Meta, and Netflix. All three of these stocks are under their 200-day moving average, which is somewhat unfathomable for names like Meta and Netflix. We're talking about the king of communication services. We're talking about the king of media right now. And what's really underrated about Oracle, in my opinion, is the markets got ahead of themselves because of that earnings report with their forward booking numbers. It caught Wall Street by surprise. They immediately corrected themselves. Oracle's well off of those levels, off of earnings, but they had that recent news. They're now part owners of TikTok. And this is a segment that could be, in terms of short-term and long-term growth, very bullish for a name like Oracle. And of course, if they could figure out, their data center issues and actually have the capabilities of potentially achieving those, really frothy booking numbers, Oracle's severely undervalued for the long term. And, Meta being the powerhouse that they are, I think they're being overly punished for their capex. These three names just make a lot of sense, for investors to be looking at these pullbacks. It's almost as if it's a short-term gift. Historically, these stocks have been strong performers. They have maintained a lot of time and depth way above their 200-day moving average. So I think these are names that I would be looking at to buy the dip.
All right, Charles Moon, stock strategist, Prosper Trading Academy. Great to see you. Great picks there, because those are the ones people love to talk about, too. Thanks for joining us. I wish you the happiest, healthiest New Year. Thank you.